here. So let's get going. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks for your continued coverage of the University of Minnesota for Gopher Athletics. Truly appreciate that, both my former role and my current role with the university. I know everybody's having a busy day. President Gabel and our AD Mark Coyle, chief among those folks. So with that in mind, want to get into it pretty quickly, just a couple quick logistical notes. First, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat function. I'm not asking you to submit your question in the chat, but indicate to me that you want to ask a question, and I'll do my best to go through the chat and call on people in order. I'll identify you. Feel free to unmute yourself. If you're on mute, I'll do my best to unmute you manually. So also, if you aren't on mute right now for any given reason, please do mute your line just to avoid any kind of feedback, interference, those kinds of things. I will do my best to identify. I believe I recognize many of you. When I call on you with your name and your outlet to make sure Mark and the president know who they're speaking with. If for some reason I don't know who you are, I apologize for that. Please do identify yourself when you ask your question. So with that in mind, we'll get right into the Q&A here. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes. Why don't we start with Andy Greeter from the Pioneer Press. Andy, if you have a question, feel free to unmute and ask.
President Gabel, I wanted to get a sense of what the meetings have been like with the different presidents, what the nature of the question was when it comes to the postponement of the season, where you voted and why.
Hi, Andy. Yeah, and hi, everybody. So meetings have been thoughtful. We have been following a very layered consultative process, relying on our medical experts, consulting with our ADs. Then the conference pulled together their own medical consultation team. We have operational consultation. It has been very interesting for me as a new member of the Big Ten and new in the role to see how this group works together. I'm very appreciative and impressed by my colleagues and the way in which our new commissioner has led us through this. We didn't vote per se. It's a deliberative process where we came to a decision together, but I absolutely support the decision that we came to. Safety first, absolutely safety first. And so we're making our decisions based on the information that informs whether or not we are prepared to put those athletes on the field, and that's where we are today.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Next up, I have Chip Scoggins from the Star Tribune. Chip, if you're out there, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Mark, when you presented to President Gabel and the regents in April, you estimated that if fall sports got canceled through this calendar year, that it'd be a loss of $75 million in revenue. Is that still the projection? And then how does a spring football season possibly change that? And lastly, are you going to be able to manage this without eliminating sports?
Good afternoon, Chip, and it's nice to see everybody. You know, Chip, when we did present back to the board, I think that was back in May, early on, you know, we made it very clear that was the information we had at that time and what the impact would be. And grateful for President Gabel's leadership as she's provided guidance and counsel to our program as we work our way through this. And I had an all-staff Zoom call a few moments ago, and I made it very clear to our staff that, you know, our financial realities looks different now, and it's going to require all of us to be very strategic in our thought process and how we move forward. And if you remember back in May when I talked to the board, I made the comment that we'll have to look at everything. All things are on the table. When we look across the country, Minnesota's not alone in this challenge. You know, many Big Ten programs have talked about the significant losses that they're going to face. And so we'll work closely with President Gabel, with our board leadership, to make the best long-term decisions for our programs as we move forward.
Well, thank you for that. Next up, I have Daniel House with Gophers Guru. Daniel, if you can unmute, you can go ahead.
Hey, Mark, how much discussion has there been about a spring season, and what are some of the challenges that could come along with that?
Good afternoon, Daniel. You know, I can honestly say that all of our conversations have been focused on a fall season for our sports here at Minnesota, obviously football, volleyball, soccer, and our cross-country programs. And President Gabel and I have had many, many conversations about that. And earlier this week, as we got continued information from the medical experts, and as President Gabel talked about on day one when this started, the Big Ten made it very clear that we're going to rely on guidance from our medical experts across the conference. But when we started earlier in this week, started to look at the potential for a spring season, we just started to have those conversations. So I can tell you in the next, obviously, few weeks, we'll have more robust conversations about what a spring schedule may look like. And again, if it's safe to play for our student athletes, coaches, and staff and fans.
Next up, I have Charles Hallman from the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. I believe he has a question for both Mark Coyle and the president. Go ahead, Charles.
Can you hear me, both of you?
We can.
Okay, thank you. There's been so much talk about football. Can you please talk about the other sports that's being affected in the fall as well that seem to be overlooked because football seems to be king?
President Gabel, what if I go first and then I
So thank you.
pass it to you. So, Charles, it's great to see you. So Charles, you're right that obviously, with all due respect, the media pays a lot of attention to football and the visibility of our football program. But for the past 5 months, we've had many conversations about our Olympic sports. And again, those sports impacted by the announcement today are our volleyball, soccer, and cross-country programs. Charles, I had a chance to personally meet with our volleyball team this afternoon. I had a chance to personally meet with our soccer team and walk through the decision process that President Gabel and I have been through with our medical experts in the Big Ten Conference. And we have worked with our senior women's administrators. Julie Manning, who's our Executive Associate Athletics Director and Senior Women's Administrator, has been on almost daily calls with her peers across the Big Ten Conference and looking at their schedules, et cetera. So as you know, the great thing about the University of Minnesota is we have phenomenal success across the board, and those have been a priority for us as well.
President Gabel, do you have anything to add to that?
No, thank you, Charles, for the question. I'll just agree with the AD in his response. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. I have Dave Campbell from the Associated Press. I believe Dave has a question for President Gabel. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, President Gabel. Thanks for doing this, and for Mark too. But I'm curious, in the discussions with the other presidents that took place the last couple of days, how much sort of the voices of coaches and players around the conference who became pretty outspoken the last couple of days about really wanting to play. I'm wondering how much that factored into the discussions amongst the fellow presidents.
Hi, Dave. I can only speak for myself and then reflect on what I heard, which is a lot. Certainly here, we listen very closely to all of our students who in a variety of ways have been expressing voice consistently and certainly in the last few months and certainly over this particular question. And our student athletes as students, we listen to them too, coaches and staff as well. We think very much in the sense of community around everything that we do at the universities. And I think that's a pretty consistent culture across the Big Ten. And so all of our discussions have taken into consideration the opinions of students, coaches, and staff within the athletic department and within our communities at large. In that group of opinions also includes the opinions of the medical advisors that work with our students all day, every day, and have formed shared decision-making that has been advising us along the way, and we certainly are listening to them too.
Thank you. Jess Myers with the Rink Live. Jess, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. Mark, I'm just wondering, it wasn't too many months ago that Bob Motzko was saying that everyone was looking to football as an indication of what the winter sports may or may not be able to do. What has been the level of discussion about sports like hockey and basketball looking forward a few months?
Yeah, Jess, it's nice to see you. We've had many conversations about our hockey programs, our basketball programs, our swimming and diving program, our wrestling programs, those programs that start in the fall, compete in both semesters or start early in the second semester. And again, the announcement today talked about the postponement of fall sports in the Big Ten Conference. And we'll start to have further conversations and the potential impact on the schedules for those sports that start to, like hockey, that start to train early in the fall semester and start to compete in the fall semester or cross over into the spring semester.
Thanks for that, Mark. Next up, I have Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune. Randy, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yes, this is for President Gabel. Just curious on how important was the subject of myocarditis during the talks about canceling the season?
Hi, Randy. So we really looked at this more broadly than any one particular complication. I mean, we've been talking about the virus as a bringer of uncertainty of medical consequences broadly. And we've been talking about it that way all along. So it certainly came up as part of the list of complications that concern us or impacts of the virus that concern us. But we've been talking about the virus and our concerns and uncertainty around the virus broadly.
Thank you.
Callan Gray, KSTP. Callan, I have you up next if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
All right, thank you. And thank you, President Gabel. When we talk about the financial impact of this, how significant is the athletic department's revenue for the overall budget, and what kind of impact is this going to have on the university's financial standing?
Thank you for the question. So as AD Coyle presented to the board late last spring, there are projections associated with the cancellation or postponement of fall sports that he referred to just a minute ago. And it's real. I mean, there's a significant budget associated with university athletics. It's a big part of our overall budget. I mean, I don't think there's really any surprise with that. It's part of what we've taken into consideration in our conversations with the board and in our projections for next year. You may recall that we presented to the board for approval what we called a COVID adjusted budget, or CAB, that had 3 tiers. One of the tiers included the potential for this to happen. So it's not, that does not make it any easier to cope with the challenges, but it made the challenges foreseeable and part of our planning.
Thank you. Chip from the Star Tribune, you had a follow-up question. Chip, go ahead.
Yes, President Gabel, we've heard a lot in the last 5 days about long-term health concerns, liability. As a university president, how much is that issue just a liability because you're dealing with amateur athletes, not professionals who are in a union? How much does that issue need to be resolved before you would feel comfortable, or other presidents would feel comfortable returning to sports with this virus still part of the equation?
I'll tell you the truth, Chip. I don't remember one president saying the word liability in any of our conversations. And I'm a lawyer, and I don't remember saying the word liability. I'm pretty sure I didn't. What we talked about was safety, and our desire and absolute commitment that safety is first. And until we have a better understanding, more complete medical information, that was what was driving our decision.
Thank you. Dave Campbell from the Associated Press, I have you for a follow-up, and then I have Jennifer with WCCO after you, Dave. So Dave, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, this is for Mark. Hey, I'm just wondering kind of what your conversation with the teams were like today as you kind of shared that news, fall team specifically.
Yeah, Dave, again, appreciate the question. You know, I had a chance to meet with our football program right at 2 o'clock when the announcement was being made. And again, I had a chance to visit with the soccer volleyball programs. And the first thing I did was I thanked them because those kids have been back since early July, and they have done everything we've asked them to do. And I wanted them to know how much we appreciate how they've handled themselves. You've seen stories across the country where other programs have shut down completely. Our kids have done everything we've asked them to do, and I wanted to make sure I thanked them. The second thing we talked about was that this is hitting the pause button. We have a lot of special things going on in this athletic department. And I talked specifically to our football team about we won 11 games for the first time since 1904. Now that's a long time. And I talked about how President Gabel supports them, I support them, PJ supports them, and that we're collectively going through this together for the first time. And the only way we're going to make this is if we all stay together and we continue to represent this institution, the state, in a first-class manner. And I had the same conversation with our volleyball program, which is a national championship type team. President Gabel and I had a chance to be at the Final Four last year in Pittsburgh with them. We're a top 5 program, have a chance to compete for a championship. Our soccer team has won multiple Big Ten championships. We have kids who compete at a high level, and I wanted them to make sure they knew that we're very fortunate to have a great president who supports us. We support him, and we're going to get through this together, and we'll get on the other side of this deal as long as we do it the right way, in the safe and healthy way. And I think they appreciated that President Gabel, myself, and our medical people are making this decision with their health and safety at the center of that decision.
Thank you. Jennifer from WCCO, I believe you said you had a question for both Mark and the president. Go right ahead.
Yes, and it's the same question, and you kind of just answered part of my question there. My question though is what is the overall message to boosters, to fans, to the athletes, to the coaches about where we're at and how we move forward from this?
I'll go first, and we would speak to those groups probably in slightly different ways. I mean, what I've always said to our boosters, our fans, student, faculty, staff, all of you, is that we want to be winners and we want to win the right way. And this is part of that conversation, that when we think about what it means to be Gophers, what it means to be a part of the Big Ten, what it means to put the health and safety, the academic success, the overall well-being of students first, we're asking ourselves the exact same questions as we go through this unbelievable time that we all find ourselves in. But the questions are deeper, harder, more complicated than they've ever been. But one of the things we try to do when we're in complicated situations is revert to those core values of doing things the right way. So in this case, the right way includes prioritizing safety and a certainty around safety ahead of the timing that everybody wishes that we could have seen come to pass.
Yeah, and you know, our response is, and all of you know this, we have great support from our president, from our campus community, and we take great pride in being one of the highest rated public schools in the country with respect to academic success. Our student athletes are posting the highest grade point averages they've ever posted. All 25 programs are above a 3.0. Athletically, if you go back when we were shut down because of this virus in March, 9 of our teams were ranked in the top 25. We had a volleyball team in the Final Four. Football team wins the Outback Bowl. It seems like 20 years ago that we beat Penn State last year. We beat Auburn last year. We had some very special things that happened here. And what we've made it very clear to our student athletes and to our coaches, as well as to our donors and fans, you know, we're not going to stop. We have a president who's incredibly supportive. We want to compete at the highest level. We want to compete on the national level and do special things. And there's no reason why it can't be done in Minnesota. And we can get it done by the incredible support of our donors, our fans, and we'll continue to do special things because of the support we get from campus, but also from our donors and our fans.
Thank you both for that. Matt with NPR. Matt, go ahead.
Hi there. This is for either of you. I'm curious to know what happens with athletic scholarships for students who are not able to play.
We will continue all student athletic scholarships. We're also continuing to provide all of the support that we always provide, and the students will be able to continue to work out so that they can maintain their strength and talent competitiveness as we go through this pause. We are absolutely committed to all of our students. We know that this is a real blow to a lot of their physical training, their mental well-being. All of the resources remain available, and we will work with them just like we work with all of our students on campus to make sure that they're set up for success in every meaning of that word.
You know, I want to apologize. I think Jake maybe just lost his internet connection.
Well, I'm back now, Paul. How convenient.
Welcome back, Jake.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Yeah, the perils of Zoom immediate availabilities. Sorry for that, but Eric Strack with MinnesotaSportsFan.com. If you have a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is kind of going off of what President Gabel just discussed. How much of the conversation went into the mental and physical well-being of the players if we don't play? You talked about it a little bit. Could you go in a little bit more? Maybe Mark could get in here too and just tell us a little bit how much went into that side of the conversation, because we hear so much about the health and well-being if we do play, but there's a lot on the other side of the conversation too.
Well, I'll speak to it from sort of a 30,000-foot point of view, and then I think Mark can address the more, frontline conversations between the coaches and the staff and the students, which he's been having throughout the course of this whole process. But I don't really think it's any question of the stress that this pandemic at this time is putting on. I mean, I don't know a single person who doesn't feel real burden and challenge from this period of time that we're going through, whether it's a financial strain, whether it's a loss of some of the milestones that a lot of people can't celebrate, people among us who've had friends and family members pass and can't go to the funerals. I mean, there's just so much that we've given up during this period of time. And now our student athletes, particularly our fall athletes, have given up something really tremendous. This is stressful for them. And yes, absolutely, we took that into consideration, that a lot of our student athletes, this was their moment. They had been working to get to exactly this point that was thought through. Every single president and chancellor commented on the impact of that. And it was part of the decision, our really truly agonizing decision that we made, and is part of our commitment to our student athletes post-decision to give them the support that they need so that they are able to cope as we are all working through right now, and also able to remain competitive as we resume in the future, hopefully the very near future.
Yeah, Eric, it's been a big part of our conversations. And if you go back to last football season, President Gabel, working with her in her office, we had a mental health awareness day, and we talked about the importance of mental health for our student athletes and for everyone. And President Gabel, myself, have had many conversations. You know, our student athletes, when they went home in the spring, when the disruption began, you know, we obviously talked to them quite a bit, and they missed the structure, they missed being on campus, they missed the routine. And so we made sure that we had constant communication with our student athletes and our mental health specialists that work in our department, and those services will still be made available, as President Gabel talked about.
Thank you. We have time for just, I think maybe two more here. First, I'm going to go to Charles with the spokesman recorder. Charles, please go ahead.
Mark, can you hear me again?
I do, sir.
Mark, how much did the Big Ten United letter of demand was discussed in this? Did you read the entire demands, which are more than just health and safety? And your thoughts about that, and how and moving forward in terms of meeting some of those demands and those concerns?
Okay, Charles, you know, I had a chance, you know, obviously I did read the letter when it was sent out. I believe it was last week. My days and weeks are confused here. I apologize, but I think we got that last week. And I did have a chance to talk to Benjamin St. Juice, who was one of the members of that Big Ten United campaign. And I told him how much we appreciate his comments and how we appreciate his thoughts. And it gave us, as President Gabel mentioned, we've listened to our student athletes, not only here in Minnesota, but in the Big Ten. And I can tell you for more than a month now, I've had 2 calls on Wednesdays. We picked student leaders. When I say we, our coaches picked 2 or 3 leaders from each one of their teams. And I would do a Zoom call with them on Wednesday morning. If they couldn't make the morning session, I would visit with them Wednesday evening. And we gave them a chance to ask questions just like this. What does it look like when they come back to campus? What does it look like when they start to train again? What does academic advising look like? What does mental health look like, et cetera? So we value the voice of our student athletes. And I had that brief conversation with Benjamin last week, and I told him we appreciate those comments. And again, you know, our goal, and I go back to March 13th when this all started to pop and the disruption began, the Big Ten made it very clear. This was about the health and safety of our student athletes. And that was at the forefront of our decisions. And so as President Gabel and I would get information from our medical experts, that's what we used to follow the conference lead to make the decision that we made today.
Thank you. And I fibbed you all a little bit. I have 2 last questions in our queue here. So these will be our last 2. First, I'm going to go to Chip with the Star Tribune, and then Andy with Pioneer Press, and that'll wrap us up here by 6. Chip, go ahead.
Hey, Mark, in any of your discussions with other ADs and Commissioner Warren, did you guys just discuss a bubble idea, either with fall sports or now with winter sports with basketball, or is that unrealistic on a campus setting?
Chip, I promise I'm a good listener. I don't recall conversations about a bubble. You know, obviously, you know, they're students first, right? Student athletes. And so we can see what the NBA, the NHL does, but we did not have conversations about trying to provide a bubble setting for them that I recall.
Thank you, Mark. And with that, Andy, last question here. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, this one is from Mark. I wanted to ask a follow-up on your meeting with the particular teams. what sort of questions did they have? And then on the subject of not just scholarships, but eligibility, what did you able to tell those players, maybe potential seniors that could have been looking at their last year, if they'll be able to come back in the future?
Yeah, Andy, great question. So again, President Gabel and I had this conversation, and if you saw last week, the NCAA announced that they will have a decision on eligibility this Friday. And so when I spoke with the teams today, we did have kids ask about the eligibility. And as you all know, a student athlete has 5 years to play for. And I told those student athletes very honestly that the Big Ten, the conversations we've had within the Big Ten is that we're advocating to give those kids another season of competition, another year back, or 6th year if that applies to them, that we're advocating for that. But there's no guarantees, and we'll learn more when we get that decision from the NCAA. They've asked all the Division I members to come back to them with their recommendations, and the decision will be made on Friday. That was the first question that was asked. The second question was, why was the decision made now? Can you just give us some insight? And as President Gabel talked about, there's just a lot of uncertainties right now, whether it be testing, contact tracing. It goes back to Chip's question about a bubble. We're not going to operate in a bubble. These are kids who are going to class. These are kids who interact with others, et cetera. And so we just simply said to them, the contact tracing, the testing, the uncertainty around that. And right now, time is our friend. Think about how much more we know now than we did in March. And we'll gather more information. We'll work closely with our Big Ten peers, our medical experts, with our presidents, our chancellors to gain more information. And what I share with them is when we can safely bring you back, I promise you will compete. Because we all want to compete. We want to do it now. We want to do it the right way. But most importantly, we want to do it the safe way. And again, just really grateful for President Gabel and her leadership and her support of our student athletes in our program.
Thank you for that, Mark. Thank you for everybody, to all of you for making time here. I know 5:30 is kind of an awkward time to have a media availability, but we made the best of it with a busy day in front of us. Just a few reminders, Paul in the athletic department will be following up with a recording of this. So if you need the video or the audio, he will follow up with you. If you're not normally on the Go for Athletics mailing list, you can let he or I know, and we're happy to forward that on to you individually as well. As follow-up to this, Paul and I are certainly the best contacts if you have additional questions or you need some more information. Whomever is appropriate, feel free to reach out to either one of us or reach out to both of us, and we'll decide who might have the answer to your question. But again, just thank you for your coverage. Thank you for your continued interest in the university. Go Gophers. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.